This is another episode that is a reflection of the road. As you see around you, there's all these maps and these roads, and we're definitely on a journey with Mr. Lee Livingston. Um, in a way, it's somewhat casual, more like a summer stroll than perhaps a race down the open highways of life. And we definitely divert here and there to various things, but man, it's such a joy to hear the stories Lee talks about, to hear about the elements of the book, the context in which the book was made, the advertising industry in the 70s and 80s. Definitely one for the ages, for sure.
Yeah, and I think he really summed up life beautifully when he read that last passage at the very end. I thought about you and how I think I'm learning to hang without judgment with all people in my relationship with you.
Thanks, I think.
Yeah, that is a thank you. That's like this, well, because you create now. This is not a, this is talking about us now. I, with you, feel very much in partnership with creating safe, creative, constructive space together. And as you well know, there's elements of each of us that are oil and vinegar, oil and water, whatever you want to say. And part of our process is to hang and remain brothers.
And those kinds of volatile combinations are reflective of life. Like let's enjoy the flavor. And Lee has a really particular flavor, I think, that you'll enjoy. And you bring the courage of asking tough questions, and I love that about you. And so the reason we got the mic drop at the end, and we'll just give you the example. You got to go through this, and if you go past the middle and watch the end, you're going to miss out on why it's so cool. But there's a thing that happens right at the very end, and a nugget is delivered, and we couldn't have arrived there if it wasn't for the way Greg and I operate together and the way we want to delve deeper and ask the tough questions, but not from gotcha journalism, but from the idea of behind the veil, behind of how we want to be perceived in our public personas, is a story that enriches all of us when we tell it. And we managed to get Lee to give us some of the gold. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to Lee Livingston. Please buy his book. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And also support our beneficiaries, Blast and Compton Cowboys. Subscribe to our channel. Support us, share, comment. Call us up. Be on the show. Do you have an interesting story? We might want to talk to you, and we might not.
Sis, hallo?
Blijven.
Bestuur zeker wegen them.
Jooi iets niet, joh.
Sitaki ubenza, anika sirikie.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Moped Outlaws. And we are going to go on a ride today. Literally, our guest is Lee Livingston, author of In the Rearview Mirror. And Lee Livingston knows how to tell a story. He began writing ad copy for McCann Erickson right out of college and eventually rose through the creative ranks there. And after a successful run in the ad business, he launched his own company in 1980 and told stories with pictures for the next 40 years. And apparently he was very good at that too. Born in 1943 in Los Angeles, he grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, home of the Indians. His father was a senior executive with Bechtel, and his mother was, not surprisingly, a writer with published articles in Redbook, Ladies' Home Journal, among others. Welcome, Lee. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, you guys. Good to join you. I noticed that Greg put up a map in the background, which you can see, which has got Seligman, Arizona in it, which is one of the towns that you never want to visit, but and way in the middle of nowhere that we visited on the trip. So
yeah. So how did you start that trip? What was the idea?
Well, okay. The idea was we left Cleveland, Ohio, and drove my '56 Pontiac Star Chief, which is on the book cover, by the way, which I discovered later on was the heaviest car ever built, just about the Pontiac at that time. Which
The one in the picture right here on the left, that's that one.
Yeah, that one up there, the red and black. It was it it was great. We drove it to summer jobs. My dad got us summer jobs in Sequoia National Park, which you think would be the greatest thing in the world. But, we had girlfriends back in Cleveland and we were going, what the hell are we doing in California? And we were drinking our beers and, up on the cliffs out there and going, we got to go back. I mean, what, and
So we're starting at the end of the trip or the beginning, Lee?
So that's the beginning of the trip.
Okay.
We're out in California, so a little bit of your background stuff was wrong. Anyway, we ended up in Sequoia National Park. Hot to go back. I did meet a girl and ran down to Long Beach with another guy. And coming back from Long Beach, we were drinking beers, which we did at 18 in our open, 56 Pontiac.
No seatbelts.
No seatbelts. That car was so, and so we hit the San Joaquin Valley, and I guess you guys are out there, so the San Joaquin Valley in the middle of June or the end of June, beginning of July. It's got to be about 98 degrees, even at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Started driving up to Sequoia, and I drove the car off a cliff. I mean, I basically drove the car off the road. And
you were drunk?
No, I fell asleep.
Okay.
Got it.
So I fell asleep in this giant 1956 Pontiac. went off the road and and it just sort of like flew off the road, and I woke up the gravel and then instead of flipping or turning over, fortunately, since it was 2007, I mean, it's incredibly heavy. It just went boom, went down about 14 feet into a farm, into a field, ran through a couple of fences and ended up in front of a house.
Wow.
And so that's basically the start of the story. The rest of the story is that car, and Dango, my friend, my best friend Dango, who, knew more about car. I was sort of a reprobate, I guess. But anyway, we got in the car and it looked fine and, it was driving fine until we hit a bump. And of course the shocks and everything were telling you, just, so we couldn't drive it back to Cleveland, and we quit our jobs, and my father was furious. So we had to take a Greyhound back, but we didn't do that.
You decided not to take the Greyhound back?
Yeah, we went to Vegas and then gambled, which was, you could at 18, and even I looked like a child, but I mean, Vegas was open. You could sit out there and play the slots. We won a little money and then went back and played blackjack, and then I lost money. So we each had about $50. We couldn't take the Greyhound all the way back. So we decided to hitchhike, which we'd never done. So that's the story. And
that's how you and Dango hit the road.
That's how Dango and I hit the road. Hitchhiking out of Vegas, which, people never pick you up hitchhiking out of Vegas, which we were told by a couple other teenagers who did pick us up because they think you're going to steal stuff. And that's where the whole thing started. And it's one of those trips that's just memorable because it was amazing, because we ended up hopping a train. We ended up getting rides from all kinds of people. And one of them being a guy that had been in Leavenworth, and his girlfriend, and he was dealing porn. He had porn shops, but he was the nicest guy. And I mean, so this is all the story as we go back, and it's a great story, and of course it's about Dango, who is my best friend, and who is bipolar.
Mm.
And as I say in the first sentence, I give everything away in the first sentence. It's you're a best friend in high school is a friend for life unless he shoots himself at 29. So this is the story, and it's definitely not sad. It's funny, and it's all kinds of adventures on this trip, and with him. And I don't know if you've known bipolar people, but they tend to be very, very bright. And then of course, when they go into their downstage, it's it's sad. But he was terrific, and you sort of see parts of that. But the trip itself is it's a great story. I was kind of mad the other day because the New York Times had their best road stories for last and of course I didn't make it, so it should be. I'll tell you, it's a lot more fun than Kerouac.
Had you read Kerouac at that point?
Yeah, I have. Had I read Kerouac at that point?
Yeah.
No, I hadn't.
So you guys were just like, let's try it. Let's just right.
Oh yeah. Well, Kerouac wasn't hitchhiking, I don't think. I mean, as I remember, he was sort of.
Yeah, I think he was in his own car.
He was in his own car.
Yeah.
I think they smoked a lot of pot. We didn't smoke pot, but we drank a lot of beer.
Well, was there kind of a mystical sort of thought around hitchhiking when you decided to do it, or was it really just another way of trying to get home?
It was another way of trying to get home that was not the way my father wanted us to, which, probably, I never did things that people wanted me to. I also got kicked out of the high school that I was in, which was a prep school. We were prep school boys. And so upper middle class.
So how did you manage to get yourself kicked out of high school?
Well, I was writing. It was another good friend of mine wrote articles wrote the social articles and everything like that. And we started to include little anagrams and we'd write little poetry sections, and the anagrams would read something like "brew it up," meaning drink beer, drink.
Yeah.
Beer
was an important part of your life.
Yeah. I mean, really showing people how stupid we were, I guess. And really did it for the Christmas issue. The little poem on the little anagram wrote, "Fuck you all."
Ooh. Yeah, that'll get you kicked out of prep school.
and that in a prep school in Cleveland, Ohio in 1961, that was, that was the kiss of death. I got kicked out. Another guy got kicked out. Dango was not part of that, so he graduated.
Do you still remember the poem?
Yeah, a little bit. And 4 o'clock came upon us at arms. Could anyone there keep? I mean, we were writing about it.
I'd love to have that if you have a.
Believe me, I have a copy. My dad made me take that copy back to colleges because I got good enough grades, and I was a class officer, and I did screw up a lot. I mean, I did get also a record for demerits, but I was, I got pretty good grades, and my grades weren't good enough for Princeton, but the guy that worked underneath my dad at Bechtel was the Princeton rep for Cleveland. So I was going to get into Princeton, but once I got kicked out of prep school, that was gone. Yeah. So I had to my dad made me take the poem and show it to people as I walked around the places that were still open in California.
Did you and your father ever find like a peaceful place where you guys were side by side?
Oh yeah.
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 Okay.
My father was totally a type A, away a lot. And it's in the book too, where I find this place with him. And, he was, in fact, it's really when I got kicked out of school. I mean, because he got pit. My mother was, "Oh God, is this going to, and this." And my dad said, my dad came to me, and it's in the book. He says, don't worry about this. He says, they're the biggest bunch of hypocrites you'll ever see. You're fine.
Wow. So your father had this outlaw vein to him, like
yeah, in a way.
it seems like the straight and narrow was not the path that he supported you to go on.
Well,
He
yeah,
supported you
he was, as I said, a type A business guy, but that's and my mother was a writer and a creative type. He was a hard driving business guy and drank, and that's but
well.
So I had the story. Go ahead.
Do you consider yourself a type A business guy? Because you were no?
No.
Isn't advertising very high pressure, high production?
Yeah, well, I went into advertising, and I started at McCann Erickson in the mailroom, but I went to Gray Advertising, which was a huge agency, and in fact was and for a while the biggest in the world. And I became a vice president creative director. They said I was their youngest vice president creative, because basically, it's advertising is making up stories, which lies and stuff. I mean, that's basically what I do, but that's not type A, because it's like I lay around a lot and just think of things.
All right, so here's one thing that keeps coming up: the photo that's over your right shoulder. Is there a story to that black and white photo?
Over my,
not that one, the other one. That one, yeah.
Actually, that's me at. Oh, can you see that? That's me at like 3 or 4.
Oh, really? You're 3 years old?
Yeah.
So that's your family, your mom holding you?
No, it's just me standing there. I think it's at my 3rd or 4th birthday.
Okay.
And a little towhead. So, but advertising, advertising was I loved it, and I drank, and it was not a career in the 70s where you could stay married.
Well, I'm wondering. Well, you just opened up a Pandora's box right there.
Yeah.
So, how many marriages have you had?
Well, that was the end of my first marriage. Who was my high school sweetheart, or no, college sweetheart, and I ended up going to Claremont, which is a college out here, which was then very small. Anyway, yeah. So that ended in 1973 when I was in because advertising was, boy, and creative directors, and you were sort of like. Well,
wait, let's open that up a little, because you said advertising was like the men's club. What was it?
Advertising was like Mad Men. I mean, you've seen Mad Men. I mean, I was right there. It was true. I mean, so
for Greg, who hasn't seen it, and for others who may not have seen it, what was your life like, and why was it that you couldn't maintain a marriage as a result of being in the advertising agencies?
Well, I mean. Well, okay, here's high school in the 60s or late 50s is, it's not like high school today. I mean, it was almost puritanical, really. I mean, some guys had girlfriends, but I was all, you were not sleeping with anybody, but you were.
Those are where they had a ruler to make sure you were so far apart during prom dances.
Yeah, sort of. But I mean, you were.
All right, but let's skip now.
Let's say your horniness didn't change at all. I mean, you were.
Right. But now we're in the late 60s, early 70s. You're in
late
advertising.
60s, early 70s, it all just opened.
So
I don't know if you remember the book Fear of Flying.
Oh, yeah. Erica Jong. Yeah.
Erica Young, Fear of Flying, the zipless fuck, and all that stuff.
So you're in
that has nothing
advertising,
to do in my book, by the way, people. So don't,
right? But you're in advertising, and
Yeah.
there's a cultural revolution or a sexual revolution going on.
Well, yeah. It basically, this is why the Me Too movement is sort of, silly, because the Me Too movement owned women, and after Erica Young's book, and especially in things like advertising and stuff, you had women basically, if you were halfway decent looking, and all of a sudden I'm a young hotshot creative at an agency, you'd have women come up to you and, hey, what are you doing for lunch or something? I mean, or what are you doing tonight? You want to, I mean, it was, and I was not, and having gone through that high school where I couldn't get laid, all of a sudden, okay, I could get laid whenever I want.
So sexual variety was there, and that was your priority.
Well, women were there. Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me of that Eddie Murphy bit where it's just falling out of his pockets. Wait, that's mine. Wait, hold on. All right. So you have this plethora of sexual experiences and a lot of freedom.
Let's call it yeah.
And
the sexual experiences were pretty much women. Okay. I mean,
yeah,
women and,
okay.
And basic, no, I didn't have 5 women at once or 3, just the fact that I went through women. Okay.
Right. You were non-monogamous is what we're getting at.
You were getting at. And, and my first wife and I broke up. We were both on career paths that went like that. And so.
Does it make you nervous talking about this part of your life?
No. I mean, a lot of it was drinking. And then when I started my own production company and stuff like that, there was a lot of cocaine. I mean, the 70s they say if you remember the 70s,
you weren't there.
You weren't there. Yeah. I remember the 70s. I remember I was there, and it was maddening. And and I stopped basically then when I met my new wife, who's Jewish, by the way. And so that was part of it, because she went, after we had my first kid, I married her when I was 40. We had my first kid, and she went, you stop drinking, you stop, or that's it. And so I got into AA, and I stopped for basically 30 years. And now I have a glass of wine every once in a while.
And you're still together with your wife?
Oh yeah. She's the boss.
Yeah. So did she help guide your career and your success as a result?
No, she was actually my rep. Okay. So she'd go out and rep my reels, and she's a really good talker and stuff like that. And even though I'm talking now, and you guys got me talking, I guess, but I didn't talk much unless I drank. So I was, she did a lot of the talking. So it was great. People said I married her so I didn't have to talk.
I have a sense that you married her for a different reason.
Well, I did. Yeah. Maybe I loved her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite probably.
So tell us about the transition from the advertising business into the, picture business.
Well, I wrote a lot of commercials. By the way, why are you guys named Moped Outlaws?
Well, don't change the subject. We'll tell you in a minute.
Okay.
But go ahead and answer the question about the transition. How did you transfer?
Well, I was vice president creative. I was doing a lot of commercials, and I did commercials. Basically, I was the creative director on Honda motorcycles. That's why I was getting there. And so you meet the nicest people on a Honda if you remember back that far, which you guys probably don't.
Right. No, I remember that campaign.
Well, that campaign turned motors. That campaign was after Marlon Brando and the Wild Ones.
Right.
It basically turned the whole, it opened up motorcycling to everybody.
To families. I remember that. My uncles had a Honda.
Of course it is. And I sold it. I sold it to him. So the ads after You Meet the Nicest People, I wrote for basically 9 or 10 years on Hondas, sold a lot of them. And then in 1980, around there, it was getting harder and harder to sell motorcycles, because what happened is motorcycles reached the 20% of the United States would buy motorcycles. And then it sort of hit that was it. They couldn't expand it anymore.
That was the saturation point.
Yeah. And so they came out with a new bike, which was basically a moped, which was my last campaign. It's a big musical. Come on, America, get on the Honda Express. And it totally bombed, nobody got it. We couldn't break that 20%.
Yeah.
So Honda went to another agency at that point. And I just said, this has been too much. And I had been on a lot of commercials with other directors and watching them. And I made suggestions on various commercials, and I had one, and we'd shot with some of the best cameramen ever. One time I had a cameraman, I said, why don't you set the shot up over here? And the director said, and the cameraman said, since I was the creative director, I said, no, I want it over here. So so I started directing my own commercials and did that for until about 4 years ago. But the last few years, I was basically back to writing stuff. I did campaigns did a lot of promos and trailers for MGM, and I worked with an editor.
So I'm wondering, if you have a passion in advertising, are there any campaigns that came out from other people that were game changers, where you were just like, wow, that is epic, what I'm seeing right now?
Well, Apple's first broke that with basically the 1984 commercial.
Yeah.
That was a game changer, and that was done by an agency in town. And you couldn't, but then, then they did an awful commercial after that, which was comparing everybody to lemmings.
Right.
In other words, if you didn't buy an apple, you were walking off a cliff. And
Right.
I
remember that.
So I have I said, oh, those guys weren't that good, So,
They were a one-off. But were they also part of that campaign with Gandhi and John Lennon and Mother Teresa?
Yeah. It was a terrific campaign, and took Apple. They're the famous Alka-Seltzer commercials, pop, pop, fizz, fizz.
Fizz, yeah.
There was a campaign for airlines that had, that didn't have first class. I'm trying to think of what other. I'm sure there.
Are there any works that you did where you're like really happy, like that was a solid turn in? That was a solid...
I did I sold a bunch of motorcycles with.
Yeah, that Honda one's a solid. Yeah.
Well, I didn't do that one.
Okay.
I meet the nicest people on a Honda, but I did commercials for Honda.
Okay.
One, I had bank robbers robbing a bank on a bike, but and then then it was they were arrested by guys on a Honda. So, but anyway, probably the best one, I introduced the Honda generator, and that was the simplest, best kind of advertising. We didn't have any money, so all we did was develop an arm that was an in-store display, and the arm came up, and on the arm was written "Power to Go."
All right. And
the Honda generator took off from there.
That's nice.
And they sold, all of it, off of that, it probably cost them, $10,000, So that advertising is terrific. It was not good for, a married man his first marriage, but
For that particular time, like you're hell bent for leather and having a
you're
lot
young,
of
you're young,
fun,
you're younger and you're horny all the time, you know.
right? And then you have your second marriage and you have your son.
Yeah.
And is there anything
And
that,
I wrote this book, you know,
yeah,
with that. I mean, I had time, you know, and I had that
you want us
story.
to sell your book for you?
Okay.
Is that why you're here?
No, did I bring you back to the book? Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No, if I was in your shoes, I'd be doing the same thing. That's good advertising, Lee. We
You
support
want the website now?
Yeah. Now go ahead. What's the website?
We'll also put the website in the show notes so you
okay.
can get the book.
The website is openroads1961.com. Okay,
right.
so there. Okay.
All right. Well, real quickly, you asked earlier about Moped Outlaws. That's based on a real life incident when I was in my 20s and I had 3 ounces of hallucinogenic mushrooms grammed up, and I was trying to outrun the cops on a beat up moped, and I got caught.
No kidding.
Yeah, but they never found the mushrooms. So Mark and I, when we first created this podcast, we had a different name. And through some people we really respect, we learned that that name was going to be a problem. And we didn't really want to start off with problems.
Yeah.
So then a friend of ours heard that story and she said, "Hey, Moped Outlaws."
Yeah.
Well, it's a great title for me because, I was a motorcycle outlaw that didn't. I rode bikes, but boy, you got to be careful on bikes.
Well, one of the things that Mark and I really our passion with life and meeting people like yourself is these areas that are hard. And you mentioned you can have a best friend for life unless they put a bullet in their head. And here you are with Dango, who's your best friend. It sounds like there was a soulmate relationship there.
There
You guys,
There
yeah.
was. And we knew each other from, before junior high and then through junior high and then through this. And, we're changing schools all the time. And I had my other best friend from this prep school. He was the smartest kid in the prep school. We wrote this stupid, article and got the anagram, to get us kicked out. And here he was, he had an IQ, I don't know where. And then he committed suicide in 1980, so, and that's because he was so brilliant. He actually came out to California and everything, got married, but he was doing drugs and stuff all that time. And the drugs got him, so.
Was that also part? I think you've mentioned Dango was bipolar.
Yeah, he wrote me a letter. The other best friend wrote me a letter because he was older. And he said, I've got the same disease, he said. And, I guess I'm not the best person to have for a best friend, but, it's like these guys were brilliant. And, so I think I probably wasn't as brilliant, and that's what saved me. Who knows? I think having that really, it's tough. And bipolar is something just.
There's something inherent about being an outlaw or an outlier,
right,
in a culture that values conformity, that makes it emotionally unstable for someone because they don't have a tribe, they don't belong anywhere, and that loneliness breeds discomfort in really high ways. And it sounds like you are brilliant, and that you just managed to find a tribe through your wife and through other ways of operating that supported you and then kept you out of the darkness in that way.
Possible.
And
very possible.
And alcohol being a depressant and the most, sort of legit, quote unquote, version of inebriation in the American culture. alcohol and bipolarism are really bad for each other because it drags people into the depths. And then, so for you, quitting alcohol and I'm assuming other substances in the late 70s, early 80s, you missed so much tragedy in your life and were able to operate from.
Well, yeah, I avoided this tragedy where, where you get so black that you do that. I mean, I imagine I could have gotten there if I'd kept drinking or if I'd kept doing drugs, but it's I mean, I'm 82 now, and it's remarkable how, knock on wood here, how healthy I feel and how I feel, God, why am I living this long? Or maybe it's to write another book,
What would that book be about?
Probably Mad Men in La La Land was.
Got it. So you're talking about Los Angeles and the advertising agency in the late 70s and early
Yeah,
80s.
it won't be as, this book is this book is fun. And this book is about a trip with two wild, crazy guys we didn't follow rules. I mean, that was basically,
You had a good time.
Yeah, that was basically the rule for me and my friends was to not follow rules. Okay, so that's how we got into trouble, and that's what we did, and then hitchhiking across country. But it was so wonderful, and the people that we met were so strange. I mean, a pornographic Leavenworth guy. The guys that took us into Cleveland were two young black guys that were drinking. We got in the back of the seat, and they were drinking. Wine, and they passed the wine back to us. And the guy in the front seat started to fall asleep, and I went out, I said, whoa, whatever, Jed or whatever his name was. I said, you looks like you're getting tired. You want me to drive? And he let me drive into Cleveland. This is driving back into my high school town. The two black guys and Dango sleep in the car. And I'm driving back into Cleveland, and I'm going, wow, this is the trip of my life, And I knew I had to write it then,
Yeah, and this would have been like 62, 63, 61.
So when did you? Right.
And it really 61 and going through the country was really a high point because, Kennedy this was Camelot,
Well, that's also where the civil rights, where their things started.
The civil rights were only down south. So everywhere we traveled, and we got along pretty well with blacks in Cleveland. I mean, there were riots, and economically blacks were really, really separated, but we played sports against blacks, and the best team in Cleveland was, I think it was East High or something, which had a incredible black team. And so, I mean, there was a lot of separation, but I mean, we used to go down to Cleveland, and that's in the book too. We go down into Cleveland, into the black section of Cleveland, and they let us into bars. There's a bar called Gleason's where we'd go listen to B.B. King and Benny King, and and they dance with our girls. I mean, that's how these are preps. I mean, I was as white as snow, and the black, if you went down and paid the money and loved the music, it was great, so that was good. But they were poor and everything. I actually went down to a bar, and I love telling this. We went down to a bar in East Cleveland, and they let us in, and there was a new singer, and she came out, and she didn't look any older than I was at that time. This is about 1960 or 61. And it was Aretha.
Oh, wow.
She came out and she played the piano. It was a piano bar down at the end of the bar.
God.
And this girl came out, and I mean, I was crying. I literally at 78. I mean, Jesus. I mean, you can't. So that's how the integration was in Cleveland. But it got worse when it got worse for the entire country. So when the riots and when LA, and of course I was in LA during the Watts riots and that, all. So.
Well, one thing you mentioned about how their finances were obviously way worse. And I think that's part of the anger is so much of their effort and energy created the wealth of the United States. And so to be in a disparity of such an extreme.
Well, so much of their work. I mean, they were working, I had a black maid in Cleveland. I mean, if you see the houses, Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights, if you've ever been there, are beautiful suburbs. And all the maids and all the people who worked in the houses were black. I loved her. And, but what, go ahead.
Well, potentially there's a lot of problem in what you're saying. And as I'm sitting here, I also know there's a woman who comes and cleans where I live every other week, and she's Latin American. And there is a privilege that I live in to have the ability for my house to be cleaned.
Sure.
I don't know, Lee. There's just so much going on in this past 2 minutes that.
No, I look. All I'm saying is I'm not saying that there wasn't racial inequality or anything like. I'm saying that the racial. We got along. We worked with blacks in shops and stuff like that. I'm saying that that was. Was there? Down south, they were hosing and people were getting killed. So I'm not claiming that Cleveland was any racial, wonderland.
And this comes up a lot when I am hanging out just person to person, that on a one-to-one are like you going and seeing Aretha Franklin in her early years and you're brought to tears, and you and your friend Dango are hitchhiking and these two black gentlemen pick you guys up and you drive into town. They trust you to drive their car. Like, there's just humanity. And it sounds like at the core of your book that's the essence, humanity. We were.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And we meet another black, there are other blacks in the book, and and I'm not saying that life didn't have to go through what was coming, and what was coming was coming, and I go ahead.
Okay, so from what familiarity I have with an AA program, there's an element in the steps that you come to make right with the people that have been wronged on your path.
Right.
And it's not so much for them because they're going to do what they're going to do with it, but for you to be able to proceed responsibly in your life. There's an acknowledgement and an apology. The word that comes up is a comeuppance, but that's sort of a punch down, and that's not what I mean. But it seems like the United States as a whole needs to take that step.
Well, you don't think it's taken that step, or that it?
No, I don't. I think there's been some minor attempts that are usually spearheaded by people of color. And I think that the Caucasian people need to spearhead some acknowledgement and apology.
Boy.
So I'm going to interject here. What we're talking about is the step of making amends. And what it comes down to is accept when to do so would injure them or others. So the idea is harm reduction.
Right.
With the ninth step. So the idea of that is you have to approach doing that in a way that doesn't induce more trauma for the person you're doing it with.
Right.
So it unfolds in its own time. It takes time. It takes there's a little bit of grace involved, that both parties come to a moment where it's available for them. You can't just like demand that you get to make amends to someone, right? Just because you will feel better, right? So in terms of the giant problem of racism in the United States and our history of inequity, it's not just us, people who look like us, being able to somehow say, well, it's time for us to be able to feel free of all this. So we want you all to get involved with us making amends with you. But there is a need in the culture for healing, but it has to arrive in its own time, in its own space. We have to come to this together.
And it all has to be done individually, I think. I mean,
right. We're all doing it as individuals in a collective environment. That's right.
What I lived through, and if you think of the suburbs, and I write about them, if you think about the suburbs of Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights, I mean, that is the whitest and the most beautiful white suburb that you can imagine. And I happened to be raised there in the 1960s. And, did I go to school with black kids? No. But did I go down and work? Did I work with black people and stuff like that? Yes. And did I, and we were talking about race then, all of us that were white, and the only music we like, and this is in the book too, the only music we liked was the black music. This was before the Beatles. The only one that, how much is that doggy in the window is like crap,
Especially after you've seen
all we were listening to was Ike Tina Turner. And Cleveland, and I write about this in the book too. I mean, and it's not making amends, but it's sort of where I was. Cleveland was a great black city. As far as a white city, we had the Cleveland Orchestra, but other than that, especially for kids our age, it was boring. I mean, Cleveland was a little too white, So, I mean, we were going. That's why we went down to Black Cleveland to get some excitement. Yeah. So that that's my racial background, and I have black people I love now and friends and stuff. So I mean, I don't know what else I can do, Greg. But I mean, read the book. I mean, the book's got black references in there that are great, and it would have been great if the world could have all gone down to those bars in Cleveland, and if it had evolved that way instead of evolving, with Martin Luther King shot and all the riots.
Well, that wasn't evolution.
Yeah, it was.
It was not evolution, because evolution is a natural course of things, and that was crime. Murdering that man was a crime committed against all of us, right? So it's important that we recognize that when power is used inappropriately, and sort of wondering if you felt your creative power in the advertising industry. And much like in Mad Men, the theme of that film is there's a point at which the main character is not so sure he wants to actually wield that power anymore. And so I'm curious again about what is it about moving into commercial production and video production that felt satisfying for you?
Just creating. I mean, and in fact, when I was getting other people's commercials to shoot, I would look at the commercials and basically directing, in a way, although it's creative, was not as creative as creating little ideas, that became commercials. So, I mean, I was directing and creating and doing that stuff, but it's much more fun and fulfilling for me to create. Now, was there in advertising, and believe me, for example, the Japanese in the 1960s, we wanted to put blacks in commercials. You could have them maybe, but you couldn't have blacks in commercials. Japanese wouldn't have done it. And we had problems, you know, there was racial discrimination. There were things going on in advertising, and you know, just you didn't have whites because, you know, or you didn't have blacks because you know, that was going to offend somebody, or so people thought. And
Right.
did I not fight that? Probably not. You know, all I was doing was creating. You know, I was creating and getting paid, and you know, I mean,
So how long did that go on, and what was that like? Like, typically, you'd be brought in on a commercial shoot, and you direct the commercial, and there was like, did you get scale for that? Did you build an agency out of that? How did you build, you know, your financial life as a result of that?
I you know, I charged for the production, so I was basically like a movie studio, so except on a much smaller scale. So I was charging in those days. You know, I've heard that the salaries in advertising now are like unbelievable, but in those days, I was charging a huge expense on a commercial for one commercial for, you know, would be $70,000, $80,000. Or a really big, the biggest commercial I ever had was a couple of car commercials, which I did for 300,000. But
Wow.
that was 4 or 5 days. That's 4 or 5 days of shooting.
And that's a full crew. Like that's your budget for
Full
everything.
crew. It's a full, you know, so you know,
Yeah.
it's actually not much more. And what my day rate at that time was 5,000, I think. So,
And
So
you did that for how long?
huh? Well,
How long?
I did it from 1980 until like, well, 5 years ago, I closed my company. But my last 20 years or so, I was basically writing promos and trailers, you
Got
know,
it. And
for MGM. You know.
are you familiar with the work of Edward Bernays? He was Freud's cousin, and he developed a lot of the motivational psychology that Goering used, and that later became part of how ad copy was evolved.
He was whose cousin?
Freud, Sigmund Freud's cousin.
Freud's cousin. All right.
So have
No,
you ever heard? You're not familiar with Edward Bernays?
no, I'm not.
So how do you feel about the way that the psychological levers that advertising pulls operate in our culture, and what involvement in that did you have, and what's your experience with that?
Oh, all right. Now you got to believe me. I didn't think of Freud once when I was writing ads. And you know, I don't think even, you know, when I'm writing, you know, when I wrote promos and things, I don't think, I mean,
So what's the art of
I
persuasion
guess,
then?
I mean, if you were, I wrote an ad, and you may think it's the worst, you know, maybe it's the worst ad I ever wrote.
I'm not judging.
No, but I mean, if looking at it from, you know, there was an ad, it was a 2-page spread. Okay. And it was written like Ogilvy, which means it was quite a bit of copy. And it was a picture of a father and the son. The son was on like a little mini bike or a middle bike. He was about 12 or 13. The father they were out riding in the dirt. They were out riding in the desert together. And the headline of the ad was Sons and Motorcycles. And it was a really hard, and I wrote it as a heartfelt pitch for fathers to go out with their sons and get to know each other and you know, riding motorcycles. But I mean, if you analyze that, it's probably, you know, yeah, get your son on a motorcycle and get him, you know, into something dangerous. I don't know, but it was boy, did they love a 2-page spread in Life magazine at the time was huge.
So are you saying that the way that you wrote and the way that you used the art of persuasion was more an instinctive talent-based thing than an analytical, sort of psychologically informed piece?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I mean, my whole life is basically, if I look at it, and I have 2 boys now that are actually in creative fields. I mean, my whole life was basically just, as long as I can create something and actually get paid for it, I mean, that was, hey, okay, I'm happy. So that's the, I don't know, that may sound too simple, but I mean, maybe the believe me, the account executives, I don't think were smart enough to be thinking of psychological stuff.
So the way that you developed copy and the way that you used your skills as a visual director were really this idea of just you having fun with ideas and doing something that would
not
create
fun,
enjoyment.
although I would think, it's basically what would inspire me to,
Purchase.
to buy this product. I mean, I did ride motorcycles. I liked motorcycles. The laws, there were a lot of laws that we had to follow. You always had to talk about having a helmet on and things like that. But, I mean, earlier on, you could write about the wind. Oh, feel the wind blow, or something like that, and do that. Boy, the laws stopped that right away.
Yeah, the
So
helmet law.
you couldn't write something saying, "Boy, this is just, it makes you feel wonderful." That would just, that would go out. So, but
And then later, as you were more
I
of
go ahead.
more of a service provider, you weren't involved necessarily in the scripts. You would just execute the scripts as they came in, and you would
Right.
provide budgets and crew and
Right.
talent.
I would, so
Who's the most unruly talent that you dealt with on one of your shoots?
no, I won't tell. I will tell you. Under the most unruly talent were stupid talent that couldn't remember 2 words. But I'll tell you the best talent I ever worked with, and for about 5 minutes, was Charlton Heston.
Oh, wow.
He came in and he had there was a public service for a hospital in LA. And I was shooting another commercial for a department store or something, and I had a stage, and they called, "Hey, Lee, can Heston come in during your lunch hour and do a commercial?" And yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it's for the agency. So, Heston came in about 11:30. We were shooting this commercial, and he said, "Does anybody have this?" Gave him a script. It was 28.5 seconds, solid copy with a telephone number and the name of the hospital. And which I don't know if you guys have ever done it, but
I can't read 28.
Try memorizing 30 seconds worth of copy.
It's not easy for me.
Heston came in, during lunch, we put him next to some Klieg lights. And, he was very nice, very, very businesslike. And, and I said, I did call him Chuck. I said, Chuck, are you all set? Are you feel fine? He says, okay. He says, I think I've got it. Yeah. He says, let's go. And I said, all right, ready, and camera and action. And he said, and he went through the script. It came out at 28.5. Both numbers perfectly, and the emotion and the crew sitting there. We just been working with people doing a department store ads that couldn't do 2 words, and the crew and we all just went, and I went, cut. And then I said, well, I guess we better do one for safety. And it was amazing.
Wow.
And that's now why they had him in front of 500,000 extras, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
That guy, and
he could execute.
He could execute, baby. So that was, I mean, I worked for some other, Zsa Zsa Gabor was one of the talents I worked with, and that was different from Heston. She would talk about difficult. I mean, Zsa Zsa, they know, those old pros, they know, if you took I got on Zsa Zsa, she wanted to be, first of all, she picked the room, which was a peach peach colored room, which would reflect soft peach light on her. And then at one time we were going in, I wanted to get a close up, and we moved the camera. Don't do it. No, no, darling, keep, because she was older, she was a kick. I mean, but that was Jaja. And, but they're, the old pros are, were great. So, but, those were a few I had to work with, but not had to. It was wonderful.
There is an element that comes up where they're professional, whether they're difficult or not, because they can execute. Like Jaja knew the room, she knew what the lighting would do, she knew what the camera would do.
Well, she was doing a commercial, and she turned to the copywriter and she says, the copywriter had put in darling, and she looked at the copywriter. She said, no, darling, I put in the darlings.
There you go. Yeah.
And but I mean, it's interesting you talk about the psychology. I mean, I can look back in my life and say psychologically, I never, I didn't do anything that I thought was, racist or anything like that, but I never psychologically dealt with any of that, any of what was going on about America's guilt or about this stuff, So, but that's that.
Was your wife a part of the company for the entire run of the company?
Of my company?
Yes.
No.
Because you were saying at one point that she helped drive some of
No, yeah, she was the rep. So she took my reel around and sold it. But as my company evolved, it started. I started to blend it into doing creative and directing. And so she wasn't around then. She became a school teacher. I was a school teacher for 20 years. So, which in LA or in California had the best healthcare.
Got it.
So it was, but getting back to the book, I don't know, it's interesting. The racial stuff in the book is there, but it's not, it's there from the point of view, from my point of view at that time. It's all written from almost the point of view of an 18-year-old, but with a 70-year-old looking or 75-year-old looking back, and you can see how it flows together. And I'm really mad that the New York Times didn't put it in for best, road.
Did they review it?
No, of course not.
See,
No.
Got to get it on the editor's radar,
And Goodreads, I don't know if you know what that is. Goodreads gave it a rave review, and it's not on the Goodreads best travel books either, So
well, that means
I guess I should be out there.
There's an opportunity here for you to get the book in front of more people.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
so if anyone watching our show knows the folks at the New York Times, we'll tell you how to get the book. There'll be a link to Amazon or your favorite bookstore. And then we'll also provide the access to Lee's website, and we'll get you hooked up within the Rearview mirror. And you'll get to look back at an important, fun, adventurous time in a man's life, but also a love postcard to America as well.
Love postcard to America and Dango. Yeah. And it's it is one of the best road books. That's the way I'm,
Do you think it'll ever be a movie or a series?
What?
Do you think it'll ever be a movie or a series?
Hey, sure. I've got, my son and I are maybe writing my sons, they're both in the industry, it's a rough industry. I mean, you guys know. You
Yeah.
guys are out there, right?
Yeah.
I it's an industry that I guess advertising was hot for a while, but advertising isn't the same now that Mad Men are gone.
So in terms of
I mean, I
Dango,
think here's the deal. I think AI, for example, advertising now has changed. I mean, I'm trying to advertise the book on the web and stuff, and AI has a lot to say about how these ads are written, now on the web, and that's frightening. Okay.
yeah. Well, I don't necessarily want to open up the AI can of worms right this minute.
No, don't. Okay, fine.
I would love, since the most we've heard about Dango is that he shot himself and that you loved him. I'd love to know if you could say a little bit about how you think he'd want to be remembered.
He'd want to be remembered as loyal and true to his friends. He had, there are other friends, and he would want to be remembered as fun. And I mean, he was terrific fun, and he loved people. And that's one of the things you'll see in the book. I mean, we get picked up by a family from Iowa. They picked us up in a car that, a family with luggage and stuff. And they picked us up in a car because we were hitchhiking with 2 bags. They piled us in with their kids, and Dango with the kids. And, it's something I write in the book. The kids loved him because he was a big, lovable guy. And, and I, of course, that's one of the reflections in the book. If he ever had kids, that might have saved him, or might, if it gotten to that point where I did, where I stopped drinking. But that's the kind of guy he was. People, and a lot of people just loved him for his personality and how open he was. And it's, that, and
That's your ticket to adventure.
It is. And the whole thing about it was in 1961, it was open people that picked you up, just, you had their life story, and the roads were open, and they were building the interstates, and that was it. But, guys, you've been great. I mean, am I signing off now, or is it too early?
Well, I was just asking the next question, but
okay,
go ahead. It is maybe at a good point for us to wrap it
Greg,
up.
you're laughing. I don't,
Why are you
Because
laughing?
we have
Greg?
no rules. You're asking us about rules and regulations. We have none.
Yeah.
We're outlaws, man.
Okay, good.
Spelled O.
No, I'm not. There are no. If you, I'll keep talking. I don't even know what time it is.
Apparently, you will. Yes, we can see that. I love that about you. I want to ask you.
I tell you, you bring it out.
You don't necessarily have to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
Is there a story since you've been married about any particular woman you've met who made you think about it for a second?
Made me think about
Cheating.
Oh, yeah. Probably 10 or 15.
What made you not?
She'd beat the hell out. No.
Okay. Fear of being beat up. What's one? What else?
No, I mean, because I'm married now, and, I've got a family, and,
So are you saying integrity, personal integrity is what made you not?
Yeah. And you're assuming I didn't. So, that's good.
Well, I'm taking you at your word.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that potentially? Do we have a breaking news item here?
No, I'm not saying that.
Do you think Paul Newman's famous quote, "Why would I go out and get hamburger when I have steak at home," resonates with you? He was asked about his marriage.
I don't.
No, he was asked about his marriage and
with Joanne, and
right. And in essence, he was saying, I have the best that is available at home.
Right.
Why would I go out and mess that up?
Yeah. Well, Newman was Jewish. So, I mean, that's a little,
Are you Jewish?
No, I'm not. I am so goy. That's that's the other thing. That's what isn't down there is, and my middle name. You know what my middle name is? It's W.
Charles.
No,
What
it's
is it?
White.
Ah!
My middle name is Lee White Livingston, and they gave when I left advertising, they gave me a what do you call a calligrapher? A calligrapher.
Okay.
Did a beautiful calligraphy of Lee White Livingston. And then underneath they put more than a middle name, a way of life.
Ah, geez.
And that was a joke. That was a joke to us because we were anything, we were anything but plaid pants and golf courses. So
Real quickly, my father was Jewish and my mother was Catholic.
okay.
And my father marrying a shiksta
Does not make you Jewish.
Well, his family, his parents didn't talk with him for about 3 to 5 years. Was there any trouble with your in-laws?
Oh yeah.
There
No,
was.
no. First of all, it was her second marriage and my second marriage. So we married. We had I always had big Christmas trees when I was a kid and everything. We did Christmas and everything like that. The minute we had a child, the in-laws were like, well, they're Jewish,
Yeah.
and so basically we celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, and the two boys. But I have the last laugh in a way, because the two boys were both like I was, totally towheads, and could have walked through Nazi Germany without anybody looking at them. But they're Jewish, and
they had bar mitzvahs, and they were
no, they didn't. We didn't do bar mitzvahs. She's very open. I mean, but we went to. I've been to a
Brisk.
No, not a but I've been to every year. I've been to Passovers. We don't do Easter eggs that much anymore, but I've been to Passovers, and the family is. I used to call. I went to a Thanksgiving my first year of our marriage or something. I was like, oh my God. I mean, it's very much like Annie Hall. I mean, my family, there were 4 of us and we had a table. We must have sat 6 feet apart, and 4 of us. And that was
doing cocaine.
Huh?
And 4 of you were doing cocaine.
No. This back in my old days when my father and everything.
You mentioned Annie Hall, so I thought.
Annie, yeah. But did we talk? Oh yeah. And then I go to this Jewish Thanksgiving, and it's like people screaming at each other, and it's I love it. I miss it now because we're in California and they're all in LA. And I was telling my wife we're going to go back to LA because I got to have myself a Jewish Thanksgiving with a big family. So
does that include chow mein?
Huh?
Does that include chow mein?
No.
Okay. So there's a lot in this conversation that I see as very spiritual elements of the road, you and your best friend, a soulmate, going on this grand adventure at a very pivotal time in becoming who you are, your journey through AA, your marriage to your current wife and the blending of spiritualities, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have, what is your sense of that creator of which we all are a part of?
Well, I think the AA version is pretty, safe. I mean, but it's a little too, the higher power. It's a little too, I don't know. I think it's human love for each other. I mean, now I want to read in the book somewhere because I do come to that. And I'm trying to, and it actually sort of goes along with what you were saying. Oh, here. So I'll read this from the book. I had a map on the trip, okay? And near the end of the book, I say, I wish I had that map now, because I'd write things on the map where we got picked up. And I wish I had that map now. I wish I had a map for all the trips I've taken in my life. Because looking back, that's kind of the way I break it down. Life, I mean. I see it as a series of many different journeys searching for love or purpose or God, or maybe just a friend to kick back and talk with who doesn't judge you. And those may all be the same thing.
That's it. That's it. Drop the mic. Thank
That's
you, Lee. Great question, Greg. Really love that.
All right, we have a final question because that was such a 10-point landing. You nailed it. So here's our final question, Lee. Eminem or Foo Fighters?
You're talking about music now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was before that. I continue.
Sinatra or Bing Crosby?
I'm Bob Seger and I Tina Turner. Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Got it.
Thank you very, very much.
All right, guys. It was great. Well, you guys got a lot out of me. I'm not usually that talkative. Okay.
Appreciate
Goodbye.
that.
All right. So
did you have brandy in your coffee?
Huh?
Did you?
No. I'm allowed. Look, I'm allowed one glass of wine every other day. And I cheat a little.
Best to you and your family. Thanks for being with us.
Okay.
We will definitely.
You guys are great.
Things. So are you, Lee.
Okay.
So are you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
We'll talk to you later.
Recording stopped.